just wanna feel like this forever. I love it when my feet don't touch the ground, touch the ground. Don't wanna let these colors fade, kaleidoscopes inside my head. Just wanna feel like this, just wanna feel like this forever.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good. Okay, so pardon the technicality, Sean. Good evening, everybody. My name is Edson Ochoa, and I'm your co-host for this, which is episode 4 of Down in the Valley. And today, as you probably heard, we have Sean as our producer today. So if you guys have any questions, any comments, concerns, whether it's with RGVFC, the Barracudas, or actually we'll get to that later on. But we will be talking about the Dynamo as well. So I'll just let it out there right now. Sean will take care of that pretty much, since he's more knowledgeable, especially now that we have the all this news to talk about with the re-signings. And as well as the couple of drafts that have been happening these past couple of days. I believe we had the expansion draft, as well as the waiver draft that actually happened today. And he'll have more information about that in a little bit. But first, let's go ahead and talk with the USL and RGVFC specifically. Before we get to RGVFC, I did want to talk about a couple of things that have been going on with the USL. For starters, the USL did actually partner now. They are now partnered with Select. I believe their contract with Nike actually ran out, so they have a new partnership with soccer manufacturer Select. They will be the official match ball provider for all USL properties beginning next season. I will post a link to the article. I'll post some pictures on Twitter as well, what the new ball is going to look like. And honestly, from what I can see right now from the article, excellent. Really, really nice ball. Some information on here says the Select is well established in European football, becoming the official match ball provider to the Bundesliga. The two Bundesliga, beginning in the 2018-2009 season. So they took that contract away from Adidas, if I'm not mistaken, right? Bundesliga had the rights with Adidas, and now Select is gonna take over for next season, starting next season as well, and is right now the official sponsor or partner of the Danish Superliga. It says its new agreement covers all USL-related properties, including the United Soccer League, one of the most prominent Division II professional leagues in the world, the USL's Division III, the Premier Development League, and the Super Y League, which is the Youth League. Select will support its partnership through additional marketing and advertising, while enhancing each USL club's merchandise offering of licensed and official replica balls. Yes! Finally! Nike the USL match balls they never sold them. It would have been awesome to be able to go to the team store and purchase one of the official balls, or maybe even the replicas. But no, actually Nike did not did not have that. But now with Select, it'll be like, you know, ordering one from soccer.com from La Liga, the Premier League, you know, even if it's just the replicas, you know, I'm very, very fine with that. I mean, that's actually pretty cool. It says, this new agreement between USL and Select will continue to raise the profile of both organizations and create synergies to drive the growth of professional soccer forward in the region, said USL Chief Executive Officer Alec Papadakis. We are thrilled to work with a partner that wants to build and grow with the USL and believes in our vision for the future of soccer in this country. In addition, for our continued success, it is important that we are aligned with an authentic football brand for our fans and our clubs. This is a great quality ball and premier brand in the sport. And then it just talks about, you know, the history behind I can't even talk about Select, the company Select. It was actually founded in 1947 by Danish national team player, I'm probably going to screw this up, Eigen Nielsen, something around there. So that's actually a pretty nice move by the USL. You know, it aids with the marketability of the league. You know, being able to sell this kind of product to your fans. You know, being able to to purchase the official match ball and everything. So I mean that's something good that the league has decided. In other news, I actually wanted to talk about this ever since episode 3, but I didn't really have a chance to get to it because we started talking about, you know, Gina Gonzalez leaving, and we also had you know, some Barracuda stuff that I really wanted to get to. But the USL actually did team up with the Dallas Cup, so that the USL Club's academy teams will be able to participate in this tournament. It says, the United Soccer League, one of the most prominent Division II leagues in the world, announced on Tuesday a new agreement. This was on the 28th of November. A new agreement with internationally renowned youth competition, the Dallas Cup, that will see USL Academy teams enter the event in the 2018 season. USL Academy teams from the Charleston Battery, OKC Energy FC, Orange County SC, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Rio Grande Valley FC, St. Louis FC, and San Antonio FC will all be able to compete at the 2018 Dr. Pepper Dallas Cup, with the 39th edition of the tournament set to be held between March 25th and April 1st, 2018 in Frisco, Texas. Frisco. We are delighted to establish this relationship with one of the most prestigious academy events in the world, said USL VP of Competition and Technical Development Gordon Bankston. Providing a platform for the top teams from professional USL academies to go head-to-head against elite competition from around the world is a tremendous step forward. Offering opportunities such as this on an annual basis provides crucial experience and important reference points for young aspiring players as they compete to reach the professional ranks in their hometown USL clubs in the future. As a league, we're always looking for new approaches that will help grow local talent in our team's markets. Working alongside the Dallas Cup creates significantly more opportunity for those ideas to come to fruition in the immediate future. So basically how it works, the Dallas Cup is usually, actually, it's invitation only. So they usually select, you know, the best teams of hundreds of qualified applications the tournament receives each year. And I'm assuming for the most part in the Dallas Cup, it's mostly like private teams, you know, private organizations. So it's gonna be really, really interesting going up against the top youth academies of the United States. Let's see what else. And not only from the United States, the tournament brings in teams from not only the United States, but England, Japan, Mexico. All of those countries were represented in last year's edition. It says, I guess some of the players that have participated in this tournament during their youth career were Landon Donovan, David Beckham, Chicharito Hernandez, Wayne Rooney, and Clint Dempsey. So this cup really has a pedigree So once again, it's another good idea, a good move by the USL to help these teams, bolster their academies, putting them up against good teams to help them develop these players that'll hopefully be able to get first team minutes with RGVFC and all these other teams. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I know it's going to help out RGVFC because they do have their own academy that is independent of the Dynamo. But my question is here whether the RGVFC Academy players would, if they were to get, be ready for professional soccer, would they be starting with the Brazos Valley Cavalry, or are those players gonna be specific to RGVFC? I mean, I don't know how that's gonna work with the partnership. I mean, it is kind of interesting that we're a development team for the Dynamo, yet we have our own academy. I mean, which is good, but it is kind of confusing considering that we are, the development team for Dynamo first team minutes, and we also have Brazos Valley Cavalry in the pipeline with for the under 23s. So, got any?
Yes, did actually get a question from Blues fan. He wants to know, or brings up the question about the new head coach.
Okay.
And you and I discussed this yesterday a little bit at length about, based on the head coach hire, do you see this being an indication of how the Dynamo want to implement RGV or the head coach into the parent club, or is this an indication that RGV is going to mirror more how the Dynamo play and how they're built from from this hiring from the coach, or is this a coach that you expect to change things up? That Junior just wasn't getting the job done, so they need to bring someone else. That's his question.
Well, the way I see it, and Sean, you mentioned that we talked about this last night, but I feel that Gerson Echeverry is going to mimic, for the most part, the preferred formation, the preferred tactics of Coach Cabrera, El Profe Cabrera. They did mention, I believe, what was it, yesterday, or was it on Monday, where they had the press conference, Coach Cabrera?
No, that wasn't Monday.
That was yesterday, right?
I want to say that was Saturday.
No, the one that they had at the stadium.
Oh, no, that was yesterday. That was yesterday midday, like noon.
So they asked him, I believe it was Corey Ripken from the Chronicle, who kind of followed up on this question regarding the 4-2-3-1 formation that he would use for the most part when he was coach at RGVFC. And so he just kind of mentioned that with the Dynamo, it's he has the kind of players where they can pretty much change formations on the fly. But I feel that with the pipeline, he's going to want some sort of not autonomy, but the opposite. So basically, like each different level, the development academy, the DA, you also have the Brazos Valley Cavalry, RGVFC, and the Dynamo to kind of learn one same system. So that way, the players that are going to be going through the ranks will, when they move up to the next team, they're not going to be learning everything, a new formation from scratch. And so that's what I feel is going to happen with Gerson Echeverry. Gerson Echeverry, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but he did work for a couple of years under Coach Cabrera with the under-17s of the U.S. men's national team. So he knows the system. And I'm assuming I'll have to do more research on it, but with his previous job, he managed some sort of the same system. So it's going to be very interesting. More than anything, and I mentioned this before, the kind of players that he's going to want to bring. But from what Coach Cabrera has been talking about ever since he became the coach with the Dynamo, where he wants the one same system throughout the ranks. I feel that with under Junior Gonzalez, he wanted to go his own route, but didn't know how to do it. So now they actually want, somebody that'll establish that same kind of system with RGVFC. Is it going to work? We know that Gerson Echeverry is not Coach Cabrera. He doesn't have much experience in pro level, which is going to be very interesting. RGVFC is pretty much his first experience coaching professional soccer as a head coach. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I know there's going to be fans out there that are, I know there is. I've already seen some comments where they're kind of criticizing, the choice. They're saying, "Oh, we're going to have another one of these seasons." But I'm willing to at least give the guy a chance. Show what he's got, and hopefully we'll go back to being competitive in the USL. Any other questions?
He just had a comment related to your first thing, talking about the Dynamo tapping into the RGV Academy down there, making the point that it's not really all that confusing, considering RGV Academy can get local players that the Dynamo might not be able to get due to distance, and maybe work their way into the full Dynamo system, PDL.
But see, that's the interesting part, because the Houston Dynamo actually has their academy, their RGV chapter down there.
I wonder if maybe at some point that's going to get kind of folded into one type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Or if that's maybe just an opportunity for RGV to reach out separately, build up, their own base of players. Maybe there's a thought process at some point that the Dynamo might pull away and might let them run their own club separately.
Yeah.
But I don't
know. What they told me about the plan that Alonso Cantu had was to be able to reach some sort of autonomy. I'm assuming that would be like phase one, have an individual youth academy that will be specific to RGVFC in order to kind of be competitive and not rely too much on what the Dynamo can find, and we fill up the first team with youth, with local youth, and that if they excel with RGVFC, then they can move up to the first team with the Dynamo.
All right, I got another question for you. This one comes from Rafael Hernandez. He asks, are there any top prospects at RGV? Any that you think might get called up soon? I can think of one head.
Justin Bilyeu?
No, I was thinking of...
yes. I think the goalkeeper, Borja.
No, I wouldn't think of that one either.
Luca?
No. Jorginho James.
True.
So there's 4 or 5.
Yes.
So go ahead and list them off for them, and then tell them where they play, and then what strengths and what weaknesses you think you've seen in over there. That's probably the way to address that one.
Okay. So this past season really wasn't that great, but there were a couple of standouts from the first team. So he mentioned Jorginho James. He's a Jamaican. He usually plays in the central defensive midfielder. He's very, very strong. Joe Willis is okay. I actually prefer Callie Brown, but like I said, okay. So Jorginho James is central defensive midfielder. He's very, very strong. He has been getting better as far as the touches with the ball. He scored a very beautiful goal that, for some reason, well, actually the reason is Didier Drogba didn't make it to goal of the week. But one of the weaknesses that I feel that he has, he's very aggressive, like extremely aggressive. Sean kind of wanted to compare him to Juan David Cabezas as far as his play style. He's aggressive on and off the ball. Like, but I feel that Jorginho James, he's too aggressive with the fact, like, he uses his arms way too much, and he had gotten very lucky from seeing more reds during the season. So I'm not saying for him to like completely be a completely different player, but as long as like he could work to be a little bit more sneaky, when trying to jostle the player off the ball without using elbow to the face or anything like that. And I feel like he would be a really good prospect for the Houston Dynamo, especially alongside Juan David Cabezas. Now you also have Charlie Ward up here, who is more of a technical player, who is more of the playmaker. That's the perfect transition between defense and offense if you're going to be using a possession-based style like Coach Cabrera did in 2016 with the Toros. You have Christian Lucatero, who is pretty much the, I guess you can say the favorite, or the one that people have been looking at the most ever since he was still at the Houston Dynamo Academy. He's really, 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 really technical if you put him in the middle of the field. I felt this past season that Junior Gonzalez wanted him to be a winger, and he looked lost for the most part. I felt, as I mentioned this last episode, where we were going, the with Carson's ratings. I felt that when they played him on the wing, we're not receiving. Right, just give us a minute. Okay, we should be back. I don't know. It's kind of internet getting kind of squirrely here. But like I was saying, I felt like when Junior Gonzalez played Lucatero on the wing, he looked a little bit lost. How's the stream? Okay. He looked a little bit lost. You notice sometimes like when the defenders would go up against him and he had his back to the line. He didn't know what to do. He didn't have enough confidence in himself, to try to dribble past the player. And what he would end up doing was just pass the ball back to whether it was Todd Warden or Joe Holland. And so a lot of the times the surprise that could have happened on the attack was lost, and that gave the other team enough time to come back and position themselves correctly on defense. So the surprise was lost. The couple of chances that he did play through the middle, he looked much better. His through balls are fantastic. Like his crosses to the attackers are really, really good, but you have to play him through the middle in order to get the best out of him. And I felt that Junior Gonzalez just wanted to make him a winger when he didn't have the qualities, to do so, because the CM position was actually very stacked. So I mean, you had Todd Warden, you had Joe Holland. At the beginning, you had Charlie Ward. You have Eric Bird. Who else? Who am I missing? Escalante was a winger. Mams, the two times that he would go down. So through the middle was very stacked, and we were missing depth through the wings. And we only had, they actually had to play Kyle Murphy out on the wing. Because we only had as wingers, true wingers, we only had Jose Escalante. We only had Camilo Monroy. And that was pretty much about it, because I believe Emilio Garcia. That was pretty much it. Everything else, like whenever they didn't bring down Escalante, we pretty much had to wing it with somebody. I mean, Kyle Murphy did okay in that position, but Lucatero just wasn't it to try to find the depth in that position. Another player that is worth looking at was Justin Bilyeu. Justin Bilyeu came in the middle of the season. He was actually transferred from New York Red Bulls after he was cut from the roster, and his presence in the left back position was was much better. I'm not saying that Victor Garza did a bad job. You know, Victor Garza was good. He played good, but Victor Garza he isn't a natural left back. When he played with Tigres, he was a winger, which is another reason why I don't understand why I didn't put him in. Try to play him as the winger now that Justin Bilio is here, but Justin Bilio, you know, he has the strength, he has, you know, the physicality to play in that position. He tends to come up, and he's a decent crosser as well. Something that for the most part Victor Garza just wouldn't do, because he didn't tend to come up too much. When he played with against Cruz Azul with the Dynamo in the Charities Cup match, he played for a couple of minutes, Justin Bilio, and he really looked good. I actually believe that Justin Bilio, believe it or not, Justin Bilio in that run of games where the Toros had had some decent results at the end of the season. I feel that it was because, you know, Justin Bilio brought in that you can say leadership, you know, to the back line, and kind of helped them be more organized, you know, back there. Let me see who else. Borja Angutia, the Spanish goalkeeper.
Yeah, the one that I said in chat. Don't expect me to spell his last name.
Okay. So Borja Angutia, he's a decent goalkeeper. He was brought in from the Spanish, from La Liga, and he was decent. He started a little bit shaky, but I mean, it's normal. He's trying to get used to the new environment, the new team. You know, working with pretty much a patched up defense. You know, that kind of worked out against him, but as the season progressed and he started, I think the key here was the competition whenever they brought Cali Brown down. So he knows, like, every time that Cali Brown was going to go play with RGV, he knew he had to step up, because if he didn't step up, then that meant that Cali Brown would have to be brought down more often to the Valley, and he would probably, you know, lose his position or his starting role with the team. So that brought in some good competition there, because after they started bringing Cali down, you know, he started getting better. He I believe he had 2 shutouts. I believe he had two clean sheets during the season, and if anything, like, it was like 1 or 2 goals per game. Because honestly, if it hadn't been for Cali Brown, his other competition was Marco Carducci. That's all I'm gonna say. I mean, I feel bad for the guy. I mean, he's tall, but he's scrawny, you know, and that really doesn't help you when you're a goalkeeper. And you got a guy like Borja, who's kind of built, much less Cali Brown, you know. So that makes, you know, a huge difference with the presence and trying to intimidate the other opponent. You know, there were a couple of goals with Marco Carducci where it looked like he looked like a high school player. Like he didn't have a command in his own box. So that kind of didn't help, you know, as far as competition goes. We also have Eric Bird. Eric Bird's another example of somebody that might be the Bird man. Just don't show him don't show Carson the picture. But Eric Bird in the cam position, I felt has been a really good player. With the transfer of Charlie Ward to the Dynamo, Junior Gonzalez wanted for him to take over that position as a CDM. He looked, for the most part, a little bit lost whenever he played in that position. There were a couple of games I think the one that stands out for me the most was the away game at Reno 1868. There were a couple, I believe the second goal which was scored by Dane Kelly, if I'm not mistaken. The ball, the attacker was going in through the midfield, and there was a blatant miscommunication between him and I believe it was Taylor Hunter. There was miscommunication as to who was going to go and block the attacker. In the end, none of them went for him, so it was pretty much a simple dribble towards the box. So, but like I said, as a cam, he looks much better. He's really technical. He's got good passing skills, and he's got really great vision. But I feel like he might need like one more year at RGVFC. Hopefully now with this new system, with actually the consistency. I mentioned this in episode number 2, that Junior Gonzalez, he would always move the lineup, but it wasn't like Coach Cabrera, where like it had a point as to why he changed the formation. It's Coach Gonzalez, tried to see what would actually fit with his players, and so these players are like, okay, well, they look lost out there. So hopefully with Gerson Echeverry, if we get a consistent lineup and Eric Bird keeps on getting minutes, he might be able to perfect his skills based on that formation and maybe be ready to get the jump to the Houston Dynamo first team. Who else? We talked about Luka. We talked about... Who else am I missing? Because Jose Escalante was actually did not get his option renovated by the Dynamo. What I do know is that Christian Lucatero and Callie Brown did not get their MLS options renewed, but they were actually offered USL contracts. So that may actually be something good for the Toros. That way they won't be like, well, at least with Callie Brown, it won't be like, oh, it's just going to be Borja, and then maybe we'll send Callie Brown. Now it's going to be a consistent, competition.
Callie's going to be there the whole season.
Yes.
Except for Open Cup, because they couldn't call him up for Open Cup even with just a USL contract.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, that's nothing compared to an entire season.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, that'll help even more with trying to get Borja to get better and be more trying to fight for that position. I'm trying to remember who the third one was. I know it was Luka, it was Callie, and I believe it was Taylor Hunter. Taylor Hunter. Yeah. Taylor Hunter was the third one, and he looked shakier this season than last season, but that's because it doesn't help that out of the whole year you're only playing a couple of games throughout the whole season, so you do get rusty. He didn't feel as confident.
Well, and then it's a comfort level and chemistry level with your partner, your center back partner, and you lose that when you're gone for 2-3 months in a row, and show up for a match here or there. You just kind of lose that chemistry.
Yeah, especially if I'm not mistaken, they don't like Coach Gonzalez would not know until like the very day or maybe like the day before who the Dynamo was going to send down to the Valley. So it wasn't like they actually had practices where they can try to work on that chemistry with before the game. It was kind of like, oh, okay, you're coming down. Okay, so you're gonna be in the starting lineup, or like, it's kind of confusing, like, because when you have a pair of CBs, it's very imperative to know exactly what your partner is gonna wear, what kind of movements he does, so that way if he tends to move up from the box, he knows like, okay, you know what? When he moves over there, I have to come a little bit more over here to try to not leave such a big of a hole. But if you don't have the chemistry, if you don't have that kind of understanding, you know, you're gonna leave a lot of holes. So that was also another reason why the Toros defense was actually shakier than 2016. Because in 2016, you had the back four was really consistent. You occasionally would get like Leo Ayala, you know, to start, but it was a rare occasion. And back then, it was Ivan Magales, I was Taylor Hunter, Kevin Garcia at CB position, and then you had George Malky in the right position. And those four were very steady throughout the season.
And it should be noted that two of those were with the Dynamo extensively this year.
Yes.
Kevin Garcia.
And then Malky was injured.
And Malky got injured, yeah.
Malky got injured.
3 of the 4.
Yeah. And then you also got bolstered in the midfield with Charlie Ward and Jorginho James. Yeah. So your best players didn't. And
that was 5 or 6 players out of your starting 11.
Yeah, and I'm not counting attackers.
You want to pull Callie Brown out of that too?
Well,
you got to consider that because he was technically not with the team all that much this year.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and with 2016 we had Callum Irving, who was a strictly RGVFC player, the best goalkeeper that season. He actually received a couple of call-ups to the Dynamo. Yep. He didn't play, but he was there on the bench. Especially that week against in the playoffs when they played against OKC Energy. That week he was training with the Dynamo, and because he was training over there, Coach Cabrera did not start him that game.
So that's a big difference, right, between Junior and Wilmer. Mm-hmm. That Wilmer was willing to take a hardline stance that I'm going to put the best 11 out there that I can put out there, regardless of talent level, but I want chemistry with my team.
Exactly.
Whereas
it didn't.
Junior just played whoever he was sent.
Yeah, and I mean that game it didn't work because the difference of level or of talent between Callum Irving and Devin Perales was noticeable. Yeah. You know, so that's one of the reasons why I felt the Toros were eliminated from a really promising playoff run.
So Blues fan asked the question, because you had touched on Junior Gonzalez going to the Galaxy to become part of their coaching staff. Mm-hmm. Would you say that Junior's hiring to the Galaxy would be considered a blessing in disguise?
Yes.
I was going to say, that's an easy question.
Yeah.
I don't even need to elaborate. Yes.
Well, see, the thing about it is, like I mentioned, you know, with Junior Gonzalez, he had very little idea on how he wanted to play with the Toros. I mean, it doesn't help that he didn't really have a consistent lineup because he didn't, like I mentioned before, he didn't have a heads up from the Dynamo. Hey, you know what? These players are going to be going in. Right at the end, where it was consistent, where they would send down Joe Holland and Escalante, you know. But other than that, it was pretty much last minute. You know, for a couple of games, either 1 or 2 games, we had Eric Alexander, I believe. No, wasn't Eric Alexander.
It might have been because he was healing.
Yeah, I think it was Eric Alexander, and I believe we also had for one game Peach. Right, left back. Come on. Dylan Remick.
Oh.
We actually had Dylan Remick for like 1 or 2 games. He had to be at the season when they had to meet the team. We played. Josh and I played against him Mario Kart, and he says that his favorite character to play in Mario Kart is Peach. Yeah. So
I was like, how am I supposed to get who that is based off Peach?
Hey, I'm just trying to say so I could try to remember, and it did work. Okay.
That makes sense.
So other than that, you know, that didn't help. But, you know, with the rest of the players that you have on a consistent basis, that you're going to be training them, you have to have some that build that chemistry. And for the most part, it was lacking, even with the players who are technically RGV. Like I mentioned in previous episodes, one game you're trying to play counterattack style. The next game you're trying to play possession-based style. So the players are like, okay, so what am I going to be playing? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. What I'm going to be doing now, because you don't have a consistent play style. You don't have an identity, playing identity on the team. You have players like Robbie Sago, just didn't put the hustle. So, in summary, I feel like yes, it is a blessing in disguise, especially like I mentioned with, if what I suspect is correct with the identity, with the direction that Wilmer Cabrera and Matt Jordan want to take RGVFC and Brazos Valley Cavalry, where they want to have some identity with playstyles, I think it'll work much better for the Toros, in order to be more competitive in the USL. I mean, 12th place really isn't that high of a bar. So that's what I'm hoping for as a fan. So, any other questions?
Any transfer updates?
None.
Updates, re-signing updates?
None.
From RGV?
None whatsoever, except for the fact that Cali, Lucatero, and Taylor Hunter were given USL contracts. Other than that, been pretty silent. I know the rest of the USL, heck, even Reno 1868, which is supposed to be a hybrid organization as well to the San Jose Earthquakes, they've already announced some roster updates. And RGVFC has been pretty silent. Well, I mean, it doesn't help that just last week they found who their new coach was going to be. But I think we kind of mentioned upon this last night as well, that Matt Jordan tends to not want to announce it's 100% done. So I'm hoping that by the beginning of next year, by January, maybe mid-January, we'll start hearing some more roster updates. Who's going to get re-signed, who isn't. I know there's a couple of players like Kyle Murphy that I would love to see re-signed, but until now it's kind of been very incognito, very secretive as to what the direction, roster-wise, is going to be for 2018 season.
Harry Austin says, being a San Antonio FC fan, he kind of liked the way the RGV season went.
Well, but then again, we were the ones that were powerful first, so it just is. We kind of took advantage of San Antonio when you guys didn't have a specific play style or a really good team, competitive team like y'all did have last season, which I have to commend you for it, because I have to believe that the secret to why San Antonio was actually a better team last season compared to their inaugural season was the defense. I mean, now you had Sebastian Ibiaga, Matt Cardone, who started as goalkeeper, Diego Restrepo, who ended up taking the starting position from Cardone. Diego Restrepo was supposed to be the third string goalkeeper, and he ended up being the runner-up and the Golden Glove.
And this year, they signed Sebastian Ibiaga from RGV, because Sebastian was the CV down there that came from the Dynamo Academy.
Well, I know he was with the Dynamo, but
he was with he was with the Dynamo last year. They sent him down for a couple matches, but he didn't end up playing.
Mm-hmm.
Wilmer just didn't. There was something about his style that Wilmer didn't like.
Yeah.
But he was Defender of the Year this year for USL. Like, That one hurts. That one hurts.
It does hurt because you have
the team the RGV played this year. You could have had the defender of the year. I mean, he was in your organization, and you basically let him walk.
Yeah.
God, that hurts.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I have to commend San Antonio for giving him the opportunity to show what he's got. You know, it's on us that we didn't take advantage on an already established player that's in your organization. I mean, heck, you didn't have to pay anything. Well, as far as a transfer for anything good, you know. Free. But you know,
So there's another question. I don't want to belabor that part, that question too, or that note too much. But Stud Muffin asks, did the new coach come as a surprise? According to what he has seen, or she, I'm guessing he has no professional managerial experience.
Not really, because the whole idea, or the whole thing, what they were looking for in finding Junior's replacement was, one, a coach that was able to speak Spanish because of the region, and number two, had been working before under Coach Cabrera. So those were the two things that they were looking for. They really weren't looking for somebody who has many years of experience coaching in the USL or things like that. Their top two priorities were Spanish speaking and being under Coach Cabrera in his coaching career before, which Gerson Echeverry fulfills those two requirements. Like I said, I believe it was 8 years that he was under Coach Cabrera let me go ahead and confirm this. 3 years. It's because it's from 2008 to 2011. He worked as the assistant coach for Coach Cabrera in the under-17 youth national team. And then, so I didn't see it as a surprise. Maybe, you know, as a fan, someone who wants to see the Toros be competitive like they did in the first year, you know, probably we were expecting something better. But as Sean has told me before, and everybody else on the Peel, you know, the focus of the Toros isn't really to win a USL Cup. Their focus is to be the pipeline from developmental academy to the Dynamo. So, which goes back to saying that he's just there to try to establish that identity in the developmental pipeline. Any other questions before I kind of go into some other news?
None yet, no.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and continue with some more USL news. We did have some new teams coming into the league. Obviously, we have the expansion team, which is Las Vegas Lights, whose coach is actually what's his name? El Pelón. Chelis. Jose Luis Sánchez Solá, El Chelis. He is the Las Vegas Lights coach. One of the things that I want to tell Las Vegas good luck is that El Chelis, when things start going south, when results, you know, when he's not getting favorable results, he throws pretty much a tantrum, like during press conferences. And if things continue, he'll just quit. He'll just quit the team, you know. And I think for a team that's barely starting, you really don't want someone that's that explosive in a kind of way that'll react on first thought to just abandon. Yeah. So, I mean, they probably saw some good things in him, probably as well. You know, his connections with.
Hacker says he's a Chivas USA legend. Sorry, I had to say.
Every player who was in Chivas USA is a legend, but their standards really aren't that high.
You mean like Kubo?
Exactly.
Bluesman asks, is he like Bielsa?
Do I like Bielsa?
No, is he like Bielsa?
Coach Chelis? Kind of actually. What he does have, and I'll have to say that with Chelis, he's very interesting when it comes to rewarding players. With Puebla, I remember once like he set up like some sort of standard, like if you guys make this amount of points in the league, I think he gifted them with plasma TVs. I was like, I guess, if it works, to have some sort of reward system, if it works, hey, good for you. But, he's an interesting guy. He's one of those, like, he'll coach, he'll quit, he'll be a commentator for, like, Fox Sports or ESPN Deportes. He'll get in a fight in there, and he'll go back to coaching, and the cycle continues. So, pretty interesting fellow. You also have a Nashville FC, who entered as an expansion team, and you also have a team that's moving from the NASL to the USL, North Carolina FC. North Carolina FC is moving to the USL. North Carolina will join Fresno FC, another expansion team, Las Vegas Lights in Nashville, as well as a new club to be operated by Major League Soccer's Atlanta United. I'll just go ahead and call it Georgia Peaches. As new additions for the USL's next campaign. As one of the top professional soccer clubs in North America, the Teeth celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2016. They used to be called the Carolina Railhawks. Yeah. And then they rebranded in last year as North Carolina FC.
I wonder, that's interesting because you have the NWSL North Carolina FC as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So they're part of the same organization?
Yes. Yeah, they are. So the owner of the North Carolina FC bought the Western New York, the Flash,
yeah.
And they moved them to North Carolina, and they became the North Carolina Courage.
Yes.
Yeah, the North Carolina Courage.
But that's cool. You like seeing that connection, even between a USL team, right?
Mm-hmm.
The USL franchise and an NWSL franchise. It shows that if there's a soccer market, that can be leveraged regardless of the level or division of play from one side, the men's side to the women's side.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder if eventually we might actually see multiple divisions of women's soccer.
Well, I think first of all, the NWSL, we mentioned this so many times, they need to stop seeing themselves as a charity.
Yes, that too. Yes.
So once they start taking soccer seriously as an actual sport, as an actual competition, for women's soccer, if then we can probably see in the future multiple divisions of women's soccer within the NWSL. Hey, we might even, or maybe the USL might be interested in having their own USL. Each USL team have their women's.
You already have the facilities. You already have the infrastructure in place.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of ways they could market and they could build around it, and and a lot of these franchises that they draw enough, and they would continue drawing that. Plus, they would add the additional draw of the women's side. It would just, I don't know. I could see it being a very worthwhile, venture for them. But at the same time, there's a lot of things.
It's too big of a risk.
Well, it is right now. It is right now. That's not to say that it will be in 5-10 years.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot of things that have to take place before that.
But like I said, first the NWSL has to be a consistent success.
Yes.
And then once people start seeing that women's soccer is actually viable as a sport here, you might have more investors wanting to invest their money in a women's team.
Yeah.
So that's actually a pretty interesting thing. They actually also have their own under-23 team in the PDL. Yeah. So they're going to be...
That's not really surprising either, because North Carolina, especially that area of North Carolina, it's a very big hotbed of soccer.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of... that's where they used to hold a couple of the preseason tournaments. They still do out there.
Yeah.
The preseason tournaments out there, and I mean, it was a big deal out there.
And you know what? You know, the North Carolina is a decent team. I mean, they put up a fight against the Dynamo in the Open Cup.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not surprising, but
yeah. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see how they're going to be faring in the USL. I mean, you already have the Rowdies who did the same thing, who moved to the USL, and they were a challenging team in this past season.
Speaking of NASL entities moving,
NASL, go away.
Moving to other things. What about Giovanni Savarese moving to become coach of Portland from the NASL?
From the Cosmos.
We're transitioning. In case you're wondering, we're at that time. It's almost 8 o'clock. I'm transitioning for you.
Man, that's gonna be interesting. He's obviously no Caleb Porter, but
I mean, he's had a lot of success with the Cosmos.
But then again, the NASL is just an 8-team league,
well,
and a lot of them were like struggling financially.
Right?
Huh?
They were the top of the heap financially, and they bought the best players. They brought,
and yet they still lost against the San Francisco Deltas.
Well, but what I'm saying is that's not going to be the case with Portland. They're not going to go spend all this money, and
exactly.
They're not going to be the New York Cosmos of the NWSL or the MLS.
Yeah, and I mean the financials is so much more complicated in the MLS than in the NASL.
Because there are no financials in NASL. Just spend what you want.
Yeah, and that's why you have all these teams folding.
So yeah, and that brings us to Stud Muffin's next question: is NASL going to survive?
No,
I agree completely.
No. Especially with the fact that they're antagonizing the USL and the MLS and the Soccer Federation in general. Which obviously, I'm not saying that the USSF are angels. I'm not saying that at all. They obviously have so many faults, so many things that they're doing wrong. That if for some reason one day they see the light, will make U.S. soccer much better, much more competitive. But the NASL, they're trying to fight against the MLS for that Division 1 spot, but yet they can't keep a consistent team lineup. They have teams moving to the USL, teams folding. San Francisco Deltas, they only lasted 1 year, and then they folded.
They're trying to hang their hat on the pro rel crowd, the promotion relegation crowd.
Hey, I'm a pro rel guy, and I don't like the NASL.
Get out. I'm just kidding. I mean, there is some validity to pro rel. I just think there's also a lot of validity to the way that MLS has built itself from the ground up at this point. I mean, really, really from the ground up, and the sustained success that MLS has had. You can't argue with it. NASL hasn't had this sustained success. No other league has had this sustained success for this long and to this magnitude.
And what's funny is that the NASL is crying on the top of their voices that there's collusion against them, and that's the reason why they're not being successful. Is that the MLS is colluding with USSF, to try to keep them down. But why? The question is, why do they refuse to see, it within their organization their own faults, and to what their failures are.
Racker says Portland's going to have to spend though because of Nagby's departure, unless you want angry hipsters. It's fair.
What? What are they going to do? They're going to throw Starbucks mugs at you?
They're gonna ride their bikes instead of walking to the stadium. I don't know.
Well, so, and you got any more?
Nothing else. That's it. It's time.
Okay, so just before we move on to Mini Peel.
Call it the Dynamo Power Hour.
The Dynamo Power Hour.
Valley, the Dynamo Power Hour.
There it is. So sadly we didn't get to talk about the Barracudas, but they are playing. Actually, they started at 7:35 their home game against the Soles de Sonora. They haven't gotten any good results. They've lost all 6 games so far, but they don't have
MASL, right?
yes, okay. But they don't have their full squad yet because they still haven't gotten their work visas. So hopefully, yeah. But they actually last Sunday they actually had a good game against Soles de Sonora. They ended up losing it in overtime, 11-10. But hopefully if they win today against the Soles, that it will be the beginning of a turnaround.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need that one.
Yes.
That one moment of
that boost. Yeah.
So before we switch, Blues fan says in before it's a 2-hour Dynamo session, and Harry says time for the varsity team.
What are you trying to say, Harry?
Ouch.
Hey, I mean, so it's kind of like the Taurus, I'm just a farm.
Can you get bumped down to your USL spot over here, please?
All right, guys. So when we come back from break, we'll go into the Dynamo Power Hour. Sean is going to go ahead and take over, and he'll talk about everything that's been going on with the Dynamo since Josh and Justin weren't able to make it. But
we'll talk about that here in a minute too. I'll explain why they're not here.
Yeah, but we'll be right back, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next time for episode 5. Oh wait,
I gotta read this.
Okay.
Blues fan says RGV will win USL before Frisco makes it to MLS Cup final.
Oh! Blues fan, que tu voz sea de profeta. All right, we'll be back.
That and DITV.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Dynamo Power Hour, down in the valley style. Thanks. So there were quite a few questions that came in during the first hour of Down in the Valley, the RGV Power Hour.
Dynamo Power Hour brought to you by Down in the Valley.
Yeah, there you go. So why don't you read off that first question, and I will address that immediately for our friend Raphael.
All right, so one of the questions that was brought to by Rafael was, who is Arturo Alvarez?
So Arturo Alvarez is a native Houstonian. He's a player that the Dynamo have tried to get a few times. He came over from
Chicago Fire.
No, I was thinking outside of MLS because he was playing outside of MLS before he went to Chicago. Mm-hmm. He transferred into Chicago 2 years ago from I want to say it was a European club, actually. Might have been Bundesliga 2? No, it wasn't Bundesliga. Anyways, he
he actually come from Videoton FC.
Yeah, that place.
Hungary.
Oh, Hungary. Yeah, from Hungary. Yeah. Hungary? Creating new countries over there. All right. Anyway, so he came from Hungary, and we were looking at him at the same time that Chicago were looking at him. He elected to go to Chicago because they were able to offer a bit more money to him. That was back when we were still with Coyle, like in that process. Coyle was never going to sign him. But everybody wanted him here in Houston because he's a native Houstonian, and he plays for the El Salvadoran national team. He's a kind of quasi-attacking winger, more or less. For those who are really curious what's going on with that, he's basically
in my opinion, he's probably a replacement for Vicente. I hate to say that. I know that's another question that came up is what's going on with Vicente. I suspect Vicente's probably done as a player in this offseason. I want to cry because he was our best elder statesman ever. But I think he's done after this offseason is over. I think he'll come back as a coach. Maybe he'll go down to RGV. Maybe he'll stay here as an assistant. I don't know. But I know he loves this area. I know his wife loves this area. Thank you. Maybe the Dynamo can try to woo his wife over and be like, hey, he should play. I don't know. We'll see. But I think Arturo is a replacement for him, and that kind of signals what his plans are. But as far as what role he's going to play, I don't expect him to start. I just expect him to more or less just be kind of that super sub that's going to come on and provide some attacking, some passing, some distribution, but also a guy that can take people on the wings and can give Elise and Kyoto some rest. And speaking of, that brings us to the status of Elise and Kyoto. Not Kyoto, Elise and Cabezas. So it was announced this week that Cabezas' loan and Elise's loans have been terminated, but we have completed their transfer. So they are now full-on Dynamo players from this point forward. They are ours. We have paid the transfer fees. I've seen rumors of anywhere between $2.5 million to $4 million for Elise's transfer fee.
And I think they said until 2021.
Yeah, it's a 4-year deal. So the way that deals work in MLS is you usually have a contract that is 1 to 2 years guaranteed, and then a year after that is a club option, and then a year after that is a player option. So for Elise, the way that it is, it's 2 years that are guaranteed. So that's 2019 or 2018, 2019. 2020 is a club option, which the club will most likely pick up unless something dramatically bad happens or dramatically good. I don't know. We'll see. And then year 4 is his option to stick around or to go try his chances elsewhere. So that's why it says 2021, because technically it is a 4-year deal, but 2 years are actually options. Mm-hmm. I don't know the amount on the Cabezas transfer. I suspect it's probably around $1 million, maybe $2 million. Could even be possibly into the $2.5 million. I know it's not $2.5 million. But they're both permanent players now. Those were both very high on our list for the offseason of things that we wanted to get done this year. This offseason, going into this offseason, they were both very integral parts of this team. Extremely important players for this team. And, they proved it on the pitch. They came over. Everybody kind of was curious how it was all going to work. And, Elise definitely, he started a little slow, but he definitely found his rhythm by the end of the season. Cabezas he found his niche. He was that enforcer in the middle of the pitch, the guy that kind of killed counterattack, kind of killed any attack that was coming at us. And really, I feel like those two players, if you think about it, they won the Portland series for us. If it wasn't for both of them, Elise scored his goal, and Cabezas basically stopped a number of chances from. Valeri had nothing, and that's incredible right there. Mm-hmm. That kind of says it all for Cabezas. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't just Cabezas, but he's a huge part of why that defense this year was so good, and they were good. We were not necessarily top in the league or anything like that, but we were definitely good enough. That's for sure. So. Mm-hmm.
So, another question that was brought by Rafael is, I think he kind of touched up on it, is Vicente coming back? And you mentioned no, right?
Yeah, Vicente is, I say no just based off what I kind of know and have heard. However, there's always the possibility he could. He's still thinking about it. There's no definitive answer one way or the other. Mm-hmm. My gut says he might not, and that seems to be probably the way that he's going to lean. But at the same time, he showed he's got 10, 15 minutes in him on a regular basis. And, if he can go 10, 15 minutes throughout another season, I would absolutely sign him for anything under $100,000. He was only making like $20,000, $30,000 last season, so anything under 100, that's a big jump in salary for him, And the thing is, the Dynamo can afford to do that because they pay him according to the MLS salary structure, whatever his MLS salary is, but he's also considered a player coach. So he makes a bunch in coaching salary that just doesn't actually hit your salary budget.
So Rafael Hernandez says, would you do a Ronaldo to Houston deal for 2 years, $100 million?
Why would I turn that down? The marketing alone would net you more than $100 million over 2 years. I mean, that's $50 million a year. That's nothing really for Ronaldo.
But would ownership be even willing to get?
Oh, would ownership be willing to do it? Oh, hell no. I mean, there's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, Corey asked the question, right? Based off Cabezas and Elise's transfers being completed and their loans, being taken care of, does that signify to fans that this ownership group is willing to spend quote unquote big money? And the question I had to ask Corey immediately when he posted that was, what's your definition of big money? Big money means different things to different people. Are we talking TFC big money? I mean, they spent $25 million this year in salaries, and we spent $5 million. Or are we talking? Or Atlanta United spending $13.5 million to get a player. Or are we talking about big money like spending more than we've spent in the past? I mean, that's the real question, right? And I think our ownership are beginning to see the value in spending more money. A winning season absolutely fixes what ails you, cures what ails you. I mean, it really does. You look at the fan turnout for that final playoff game against Seattle here in Houston. That was nuts. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. It was the atmosphere. It was the fan turnout. It was the enthusiasm, the intensity. And they addressed that during the press conference too. Chris Canetti said, we want to try to continue that momentum into next year with the season ticket holders and anybody that wants to pick up, single season tickets. You're muted. I mean, you could turn it up if you want. Just I'm letting you know you're turning it down. So that it's just they need to, if they're going to tap into it, they need to do it now and they need to do it right. And I think them going ahead and inking the deals for Cabezas and Elise signify that they're trying to tap into it.
And you know what? They also kind of mentioned, like, if it worked, not spending too much money and being able to get to where they were. Why take the risk on something that you might spend a lot for and not get enough results out of it? And it's like Blues fans says, our ownership would go bankrupt in the first season if they tried to do something like that. Although Rafael, you mentioned it as well. Our revenue with some of the marketing that someone like Ronaldo has, our revenue would skyrocket.
Well, and it's not just revenue from game day sales. It's not just revenue from, the thing is with a move like that, the league would chip in something. Because it's a marketing ploy for them as well, right? It's going to increase their broadcast rights because they're going to increase viewership year over year. It's going to increase their sponsorship rights because sponsors are going to line up to sponsor him and the chances to sponsor teams that, when he comes to their stadium. It's going to increase ticket sales across the entire league. So the league would look at something like that as an investment on the league level. So in reality, the real question is Ronaldo more likely to come to Houston, or would he be more likely to go to another franchise? And the answer to that is he's more likely to go to another franchise, probably LA, probably Atlanta, probably New York. I mean, any of the major hubs, major markets is where they're going to look at trying to get him into. We kind of stumbled into Kubo. I mean, we really did. It wasn't, it was more lucky than anything else. Kubo had an opportunity when he came in to go to another club in MLS. It just ended up being Houston that kind of won the lottery, so to speak. It wasn't going to happen. It just kind of fell into place. We got really lucky.
Mm-hmm. Another question, going back to current players, is what's the status on Rico Clark?
So Rico had already said, and this has been known, that he was going to test free agency this year. So they didn't even they offered him a contract. It's kind of a requirement to offer his contract. They declined his option, offered him a contract. He wasn't going to accept it. They knew he was not going to accept it. So they, it was mutual understanding it was going to happen. He's going to test free agency, see what he can get on free agency. I think there's probably a team out there that's willing to put some money down on him. Maybe Atlanta, that's where he's from. Although I don't know if Atlanta wants to – I really don't know if he's the type of player that fits into it. What did Racker say?
You mean very unlucky.
Well, we'll get to that later. But, the way Atlanta's building their team, Rico doesn't make sense there, really, in my opinion. They don't need a defensive midfielder or even really a center mid like Rico. What they need is another attacking player. They're building an attack, and they just happen to have a defense in the back. But there are other teams that are probably willing to take a chance at Rico. There's also Osvaldo Alonso, who's available right now, that is basically another version of Rico, in my opinion. Kind of plays a lot of the same way in the same style. The difference being, I feel like Alonso is more withdrawn, and Rico is more pushed up. I think that's really the difference between the two. Rico tries to be a number 10, number 10 or a number 8, and Alonso's more like an 8-6, middle to back, and Rico's more top to middle. Yeah. So, but in short, Rico's only coming back if he doesn't get a good free agency offer. I suspect he'll get a good free agency offer, so he's probably gone.
Okay, another question. This one is by Harry Austin. It says, this is probably a combo question, but do you think Dynamo's super draft picks will head to RGV, and do they pick the best player available or more what they need based on their tactics?
So, first of all, you got to remember the Dynamo are picking 19th overall in the super draft. Usually by the 19th pick, there's no more Generation Adidas players available. Generation Adidas players are important in the draft because they don't hit the salary budget at all. There's no salary budget charged for that player. Their roster spot still counts, but they just don't cost. There's no cost to your salary budget, and that's been the way it's been with the draft and with Generation Adidas now for 7 or 8 years. And so those are, especially for a club like us, where we try to minimize our spending as much as possible. Mm-hmm. A GA player makes the most sense. A Generation Adidas player. So at 19, we're not likely to get a Generation Adidas player. So what that signals to me is we're probably going to pick best player available unless there's a specific player out there that falls to us at 19 that we really, really want, that Wilmer really wants or Calba really wants or Jordan really wants. But I suspect at the end of the day, it's best player available at 19, and same thing with second, third, fourth round. Usually after the first round, sometimes in the second round, you can find a flyer, a player that is kind of hidden gem in the rough, so to speak, that, you just got to kind of refine him a little bit. But third and fourth, 9 times out of 10, they don't pan out. They're really not. I mean, I don't even know why we have a third and fourth round, to be honest. They could be supplemental rounds instead. Yeah. But the first 2 picks, the first and second round, if no trades happen, if we don't trade them away and or we don't add additional picks, I do think that we'll definitely see them at RGV. I mean, we did last year with Joe Holland and whoever our second round pick was. I don't even remember. But
this was more of my question going on with that. Actually, I have 2 questions. Number 1 is what constitutes a Generation Adidas player, and number 2, do you remember what? I think one of them was Ivan Megales, was a super draft pick.
He was a draft pick, yes.
Was Eric Verso another one? Because I know.
No, I don't think Verso was.
Okay. All right, so I know for sure it was Megales who was a super draft pick, and then Joe Holland.
Joe Holland,
Are those the only 2 so far?
I want to say there was one other one last year, but I can't remember who it was, and I can't remember when they picked him. But again, that's kind of that's one of the things that you end up seeing a lot with anybody after the first round. Like I said, there's second round, you're hoping to get lucky, you're hoping to strike gold, but you kind of know going in that your chances are really low for that happening. So I think that's kind of the approach that they have is, hey, we're going to take a guy that we see a lot of potential, but not necessarily maybe they're really raw, or maybe they're really raw, or they need some work in certain areas, whatever it may be. Somebody that's got a lot of growth to go. I suspect that's the case with that. As far as what constitutes a Generation Adidas player, Generation Adidas players are actually they're determined by the league themselves, and they are players that the league underclassmen that the league feels are ready to join the league and are good enough that the league feels they can market them appropriately, and so the league is willing to chip in basically to cover the cost of their contract.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of how that works. They're usually guaranteed anywhere from 2 to 3 years immediately as soon as they're drafted. Actually, once they sign that Generation Adidas contract, they're guaranteed those years. So then it's just a matter of the club drafting them, where they go.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of how that works.
So Racker says it was Jacob McGuire, but the Dynamo gave his rights
right to Philly. Yeah, they traded his rights to Philly actually.
Okay. So I think one more. This one by Stud Muffin. He says, "Are the Dynamo done buying this offseason?"
No, absolutely not. There are more moves to come. I cannot say anything about those moves as of yet. I do have some info about what may be going on, but I can't say anything publicly. We'll talk later, Edson. But I can tell you, based on the press conference yesterday, that they looked at an Eastern European player. My suspicion is probably maybe Russia. Hungary is one I hadn't considered, but that also is a possibility. There's also the Romanian league as well as a possibility. There are some players there, or some players I should say that are Romanian that are fit the bill. But I think that's probably the type of player you're looking at, and I think it's probably going to be a defender. I don't think it's any other position. I just don't. We either don't have a need at that position right now that type of player would fit, or B, you just don't expect that type of player to be able to handle the heat and humidity here in that type of position, right? As a defender, if you're an Eastern European player, you can adapt to the heat a lot easier as a defender than you can as an attacker. As an attacker in this system, you're expected to go. As a defender, not as much. You can, you kind of get some breaks in there.
And I know Matt Jordan did touch up on that on yesterday's press conference, because they asked him, do you just limit yourselves, to just the kind of nationalities from the market? And Coach Cabrera that said, well, the thing about it is, you have to take into consideration, the climate here as well in Houston. And these South American players, they're going to be more used to the heat, used to the humidity, than European players.
Yes, what you said. No, that's a valid point though, right? You look at Dynamo teams in the past. We've tended to focus on Central American players, or when we brought in Koke from Spain, right? He's a decent player. He's played really well overseas. He came over here and he was useless. Raul Rodriguez. He wasn't useless. He was decent as a center back.
No, I'm just saying.
But he definitely felt that he definitely felt the struggle, right? It takes longer for those players to adapt, and unfortunately, with the way the MLS season is structured, you don't have time for that adaptation time, period. You kind of need to be ready and adjusted right out of the gate. And I feel like Eastern European players, just by kind of the way things are, the heat and humidity here, it's going to kill them within the first month, and it does. I mean, look at Rachel Daly. Playing for the Dash, yeah. She fainted on the pitch because of heat exhaustion.
Yeah, I remember that. So Rafael Hernandez says, should the Dynamo pull a major trade like that as well? And this is regarding Darlington Nagbe.
So you saw it. I have on that list. So there were some transactions that took place this week. Actually, most of them 2 days ago, / today or yesterday. You had Lawrence Simon going from Montreal to LAFC in a very unhappy move for him. It's the best way to put it. The whole reason he went to Montreal and MLS is because of the Canadian healthcare system, because his daughter has a very extreme version of, or I should say she has autism, and she's on the very extreme end of the spectrum. And so he went to Montreal knowing that he was going to get healthcare coverage for his daughter, that it was that it would be fully covered. It wasn't going to be the issue. It was going to be the best he could get. It was all part of the decision process. So when it was announced that he was moving to LAFC, there were a lot of questions. What's going to happen with his daughter? So I've been told, I've heard that LAFC did reach out to him prior to the trade being made, and that he does understand that they are gonna do something for him and for her. I just don't know what. So we'll have to wait and see how that kind of works out. But it'll end up happy, I think, by the end of that. The next one to talk about is the Nagbe trade, which happened today or became official today. It was talked about yesterday during and after the expansion draft concluded. And basically this one is Darlington Nagbe was traded from Portland to Atlanta. Yes, Atlanta. Portland to Atlanta for roughly $1.6 million in allocation money. And a large portion of that $1.6 million, well, I say a large portion, a portion of that $1.6 million, roughly $500,000 to $600,000 of that is actually bonus incentives based on how many games he plays, how well he plays. In fact, Kyle Martino, I think, was the one that posted the list of what the actual breakdown is of the incentives, what they're worth, that sort of thing. But basically, he was traded for a little bit more than Dom Dwyer was traded for when Dom Dwyer went to Orlando City. And so, Racker mentioned it earlier, Portland's going to have to spend because they've got this money now. What are they going to do with it? They've got their eyes on a couple players, but I don't know if they're going to spend like people are expecting them to. I don't foresee it, but I guess we'll see. I mean, they could. So that answers the Nagbe question. What was the actual question again?
The actual question was, should the Dynamo do a trade to the extent of the Darlington Nagbe trade?
Why? I mean, is the suggestion that we should trade away an Elise-type player in order to get the same haul that Portland is getting? Or is the question that we should make a trade of that nature, use our allocation money that we aren't necessarily using to try to gain another player?
I think that's where he's heading at.
Well, the problem with that is we are using our allocation funds, right? We found out, thanks to the press conference yesterday, that we have 3 TAM players. They are Mauro Manotas, they are Kyoto, and they are now Cabezas. All 3 of those are taking up a big chunk of our TAM this year, targeted allocation money. And so it's not like we have a lot of allocation money to just throw at players, right? Mm-hmm. I will take Cabezas, Elise, or Cabezas, Kyoto, Mauro over one Nagbe any day. I mean, that's a pretty simple equation for me to make. And really, that's basically what just happened. We saw one player go for more than what 3 players are making in terms of TAM. Mm-hmm. So I like the way that the Dynamo are taking care of salaries. I like the way that the Dynamo are taking care of their roster. They're dealing with it in the proper way based on the spending budget they have available from ownership. And you know what? It's working. I can't argue with it. We just made it to the Western. We beat Portland. We're doing it right. Enough said, right? So, anyways.
All right. So Elise is DP confirmed now. This is by Bluesman.
Yes, he is. He's a DP now.
Okay.
Yeah, that transfer fee was pretty much a guarantee that he was a DP. Okay. Actually, Cabezas' transfer fee can't be $1 million. Oh, no. So Cabezas' transfer fee is probably close to $750,000, $800,000, and then they can buy it down with TAM, which is why he's a TAM player. His salary doesn't make him a TAM player. It's his transfer fee.
It was like trade Kubo.
I want to believe that if the Dynamo had the opportunity to trade him, they probably would consider it. But it just depends on how much you can get for him. They've paid, what was it, $5 million roughly for him for transfer fee. They've paid 80% of that transfer fee already.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure you could get that back. So the question of, well, let's just trade him. There's a lot of value that has to be thought about. There's a lot of economics and financial numbers that have to be kind of figured up, right? If you've paid 80% in, if you trade him, you're out that 80%, regardless of what you get back as a haul. Nobody's paying what they just paid for Nagbe for Kubo, unless it's Chivas USA, and they're gone. LAFC ain't paying that. There's just no way. They're not. So you're not going to get anything remotely close to what Nagbe got for Kubo. You're not probably going to get half that for Kubo.
That's pretty much sunk cost.
It is. And they know it, and they've come to terms with that. But at the same time, the guy scored a decent amount early in the season. Now, we talked about it last week. Victor brought it up. Victor Araiza brought it up that Kubo was motivated last year to enter the season because he wanted to get back onto the Mexican national team for the the Gold Cup. For the Gold Cup. And once he made it to the Gold Cup, you kind of look at his form after the Gold Cup, and it was kind of this steady decline. I mean, he had the one good match at Dallas, and other than that, did he have a good match after the Gold Cup? And the answer is no, he really didn't. And so, all things being equal, I would be completely content with us trading away Kubo. I just don't think we have any trade partners that are going to get us enough back in return to make it worth our while.
Mm-hmm. What about Kleshton to LAFC?
So Kleshton to LAFC is a rumor, unconfirmed, but I've heard that it's very close. It's like, people say it's at the 2-yard line. It's at the 2-yard line. It's very, very close. I am under the belief that Latif Blessing, who is one of the players that was taken in the expansion draft by LAFC, is probably going to be one of the players that gets sent to New York Red Bulls in exchange for Kleshton. There will also be allocation money. There will also be something else, maybe a draft pick being sent over. But I suspect that we do see Kleshton in LAFC because he's a big-time – he's a big-time favorite of Bob Bradley, which is weird because Bob Bradley really didn't play him all that much. We're good.
Okay. It says, all right, so we know that Cabezas and Elise are completed and the players signed. What happened in the waiver draft?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Do you think that the waiver draft is just a waste of time?
Yes, but the CBA requires it. So, I mean, there's no way around it. It's just something that's always going to be there. It's what they're trying to do, and it works for anywhere from 2 to 3 players a year, is it's an opportunity for players that are kind of on the cusp of their team to get an opportunity somewhere else and for another team to take a chance on a player. Dylan Remick was the perfect waiver draft, player. Actually, no, it was Leonardo was waiver draft. It was Remick that was taken in the re-entry draft. But yeah, I mean, the waiver draft serves a purpose. It's just there's usually only 1 or 2 taken. Part of the reason for that is when you do the waiver draft, you take them at the salary that they were at. When you take them in the re-entry draft in the second round, you can renegotiate their salary. So why wouldn't you just wait for the re-entry draft? So weird, one of those weird quirks.
And an expansion draft.
Stream status bad. That's not good.
It looks fine on this end.
Well, that's because I turned the quality down to 280.
Okay.
On you. That's probably fine. It probably just needs to catch up. Expansion draft, same thing. We got lucky. No players taken for us. Not that I was really surprised by that because, when you look at the players that we left available or unprotected, while there were a lot of good players on there, for the most part, those players are older players, aging players, or players that were ready for free agency, available to go, or they're players that weren't good and are injured, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So it's the heck is going on with our internet? There we go. Sorry, just took a minute. So the expansion draft was an opportunity for LAFC to take players and the way they approached it, they took players that they intend to trade away for. So basically, they took assets, is what they took. They took roster slots that they can then turn around into other players via money or whatever. What did Racker say?
Not Racker.
Oh.
Caloists.
Oh, yeah, I hate Kalos. I had a feeling he would join eventually.
Sell Elise and Kyoto so you have more money to give Papa Sanchez.
No. No. No data now. There it is. We're good. We're back. We're live.
All right, I blame Comcast for this.
Be fair, actually. We're back to no data. We're back to bad.
All right. Racker says totally not DDoS attacking you.
Stop it, Racker. I'm trying to talk. You're a jerk.
So yeah, I mean it's pretty interesting. I mean, unless something happens like in the Super Bowl with the Seahawks decide to pass it at the 1-yard line, it's pretty much a done deal.
The Nagby deal yesterday, that was at the 1-yard line type of thing. at this point, I can say this. I can pretty much tell you the Cleiston deal is a done deal. They're talking to people, making sure they're preparing. I mean, anytime you make a deal of that nature, you want to be able to announce it in the right way. And so they've got to coordinate a few things, make sure certain things are taken care of.
I'm sure.
It's fine.
Yeah. Are there any other instant or parts of the press conference that stuck out to you the most that we haven't talked about?
Boy, there were a lot of parts of that press conference yesterday. The one, you and I talked about it last night. The question and I think it was Corey that ultimately asked the question, but Victor kind of piggybacked on it about the formation. Wilmer preferred at RGV the 4-2-3-1. And the question was asked, is that a formation you would prefer to return to? And if so, are there players that you would target or positions you would target to upgrade for that particular formation? And, Wilmer's response was pretty good. It's good now. It's fine. His response was pretty good. He basically said, really there's not a need to go with the 4-2-3-1 specifically, because at the end of the day, we play our formation, based really on the personnel that we have. And you look at the way they played. They started in a 4-3-3 for the beginning of the season. They slowly shifted from the 4-3-3 into a 4-1-2-3-1, 4-1-2-3. I mean, they shifted out of the 4-3-3 into multiple kind of shifted formations that were still really the 4-3-3 base.
Yeah.
They played a 4-4-1-1 a couple of times, just out of necessity based on who was available and who was injured. But, what he was really saying ultimately at the end of the day is, I don't really feel the need to go back to a 4-2-3-1 with this club and this, with these players, because these players are able to kind of shift out of the 4-3-3 into multiple formations depending on how the opponent is playing us and how we feel at the time. And he kind of touched on that as well. He actually said that, after the first few weeks of the season, they started to, free the players up to shift into other formations in the middle of the match out on the pitch based on what players were seeing in front of them. And they were adapting to these different formational shifts very well and very quickly. So if they're adapting to these things really quickly, and I mentioned this to you, that's what I want to hear. Because at the end of the day, if you can start in a 4-3-3, but at the end of the day you end up in a 4-5, a 5-4-1-3, well, that doesn't work. 5-2-1, 5-3-2-1? No.
5-3-2.
5-3-2, there we go. A 5-3-2 or a 5-4-1. If you can shift into such a way that you can create additional, if you score 3 goals in the first 15 minutes, you can sit back a little bit. You can absorb that pressure. And so your formation is, you have to change your formation a little bit to represent the situation and the scenario you find yourself in. And so that just stood out to me because basically Wilmer said exactly that, and it made me feel like I actually understood tactics, and it made me feel good that I and Wilmer were on the same page, because it doesn't always happen.
And another one of the things that I would like for you to talk to our audience is that when he started talking about when he was hosting or part of the commentary table of the MLS Cup.
Yeah, and I mentioned that to you yesterday. One of my favorite moments and favorite Wilmer quotes, he said, and he was unprompted in saying this. I think it wasn't a Spanish question because he answered it in English, so it had to be English. I don't even know what the question was. I didn't hear the question. But he said, I was out did the pregame show, and I was part of the Univision broadcast, talking about MLS in general and MLS Cup. He said an MLS Cup was right there in front of me. I could see it. If I wanted to, I could reach out and touch it. He goes, but I had to stop myself. I don't want to touch MLS Cup until I'm doing it with my team. And that to me, and I mentioned this to you yesterday, I want to hear that from my coach. I want to hear that from my manager, because that's a guy that's passionate about his team, about his players. He's passionate that he wants to do it with this club. He's not going to L.A. anytime soon. He's not going to New York anytime soon. He's sticking around with us for a while. That makes me feel really good. About freaking time. So anyways, it was a great moment to hear him say that. I realize it's just him, it's just words, but at the same time you watch him on the pitch, on the sidelines, You see him in practice, and he's passionate about his players. He's passionate about his team, and I'm appreciative of that from our coach because we haven't necessarily had that before. I mean, we did with Dom, but we didn't with Coyle for sure. So it was nice to have it with Wilmer again.
Blues fan asks, how can anyone get how the MLS offseason works?
You don't. You just kind of live it. The MLS offseason is structured in a way that doesn't really make a lot of sense. They try to fit a lot of things in a very short period of time. They do all these little drafts. They do all these, everybody tries to re-sign players. They have a roster freeze before an expansion draft. Then they open it up for a mini trade window for 4 hours in the morning before the expansion draft. Those types of little things, I mean, it's confusing, right? It really is. So MLS does it this way because of the CBA. The CBA sets in stone what has to take place in the offseason and kind of the order that it's got to take place. Really, as fans, we sit there. It's 2 months that we sit and we kind of wait for stuff to happen. We've spent 8 to 9 months on the pitch or at BBVA. I need 2 months off. I need a chance to rest. So I'm thankful for the offseason, even if it is completely stupid, in terms of how they set it up and how they, schedule it. But it works. Mm-hmm. You can't argue with it too much. It works. It does. It does what it does. I do wish we would go to the international schedule, but that's another discussion for another podcast.
Yeah. Racker actually has a serious question also, but he just says Tam, Gam, Jam. So pretty much explain the difference between TAM and GAM. The allocation.
TAM, GAM, Jam? I like that. That's pretty good, Racker. You should go into marketing. So TAM is targeted allocation money. It's money that can be used to buy a DP down, a designated player down from designated player to below designated player level, and then turn around and sign another designated player. So in this case, what we did was we bought down, at the time we were buying down we were buying down, maybe it was Rico. I don't remember who our TAM player was last year, but we bought down one player.
I think it was Bees.
Yeah, it might have been Bees. No, it wasn't Bees because his salary is only $300 and something thousand, so he's not a DP anymore. We were 2 years ago,
okay.
But last year we weren't because he renegotiated. Thank you, Beasley. But you're buying down a player in order to bring in another player, so that's what happened with Cabezas. We bought down another player to bring Cabezas in. Machado is the one I'm thinking of. Machado was on a salary enough that technically we needed to buy him down, so we did. Mm-hmm. So that's TAM. GAM is general allocation money. It can be used to bring in DPs, to buy down DP salaries. It can be used to cover transfer fees. It can be used on a lot of expenses that are related to designated players and large salaries and that sort of thing. There's a whole list of roster rules and regulations on MLS Pressbox. We'll link to that when this show's over. I highly recommend, if you're really interested in the information, give it a read. There's a lot of really good nuggets of information that just you're reading and you're like, I did not know that was the case. That's how that worked. It's just crazy. They talk about hardships. We don't ever see it happen. We don't ever hear about it. But if you're in a situation where you lose all your goalkeepers, they actually provide a provision where you can sign another goalkeeper without it costing you on your budget. There's injured reserve type players as well, players that go down with an injury for more than half the season, stuff of that nature that I read it because it's interesting. That sounds really stupid because it sounds nerdy, but I really enjoy reading it year over year because they change little things here and there, and if you catch them, you're like, oh, there's a loophole there now. So, and that's part of MLS too, is rosters and budgets, it's all loopholes. And that is why, and I said this to you last night, that is why Matt Jordan is the perfect general manager for this team and for this club, because he is a genius when it comes to finding those loopholes, maximizing the loopholes, maximizing your roster, maximizing your budget in such a way that he keeps costs down from a financial standpoint in terms of salaries and all that, while getting you players that you probably wouldn't have got without his knowledge and understanding. He's Daryl Morey for the Dynamo, basically. He really is.
Callowist says, so with all of this, how much actual money do we have to fill the monumental holes in our back line?
Well, technically we have the additional $2.4 million that was offered as additional TAM for this year. We won't spend that. We really theoretically probably have a couple million available, to be totally honest, and we will use that. I know that we're probably going to spend more than I know we're going to spend more than we spent last year. Part of the you have to remember, right? So if Beasley's not here, that's $350,000 that's available. If Rico goes, that's $425,000 that was available. That's now available. That's a DP between the two of them. That's a DP salary. That's probably 3-4 veterans, really, honestly. Most veterans are not commanding necessarily $300,000 to $400,000 contracts. I mean, your really good ones are. And then you also have AJD. We don't know what's happening with AJD. If he comes back, that's great, but we're not going to have him for the first 2 months of the season. You're going to have to fill that slot. Could Justin Billieu be the one that fills that slot? Hey, that's a good possibility. I wouldn't put it past us. Of course, he's only on a USL contract. He's not signed to an MLS contract anymore, which kind of sucks because I think he'd be the perfect guy to fill that slot right now. Boy, how fun would a backline of him and Remick on the outside be?
That'd be pretty.
That'd be awesome. That's the future right there, boys. Just saying, future right there. And then you also have other players that haven't been their contracts haven't been renewed yet or re-signed. Tyler Derrick, although he's a homegrown player, so his salary is a little different. You have Joe Willis, who technically hasn't re-signed his contract yet. You have Callie Brown, who's now given a USL contract as well. You had Taylor Hunter that was being paid for. You still have Memo, but Memo's a homegrown contract. So there's a lot of flexibility there, even within the current budget. And then there is the possibility that our ownership may be willing to spend a little bit beyond even what they've already spent for Cabezas and Elise to bring in a couple of additional players that maybe we normally wouldn't expect to see. So now, what do I want out of that money that we have available? A young CB. That's my first priority right now. A young CB. I said a number 6 earlier, and really I think what I need is a number 8, a center mid, because Cabezas plays that number 6 role. That's that DM role. Mm-hmm. We need a number 8, somebody that's in the middle of the pitch that can be that pivot between Cabezas in the back line up to Elise, Kyoto, Mauro, Kubo, Tomas, et cetera, et cetera.
So basically like Charlie.
So I've said for the last 2 years, I really want them to try Charlie in that position because he is literally the epitome of a true number 8. He is that center of the pitch, could live on the midline player that can get the ball up to your wingers, can get the ball up to your strikers, can get the ball to your attacking mid, and at the same time he can help kill a counterattack if necessary. He's not going to score goals. I'm totally okay with my 8 not scoring goals. Totally okay with that. That's a shout out to Rafael because he asked that earlier. But what I want my number 8 to do is to be that center of the pitch guy, that pivot guy. A good example of a player that plays that way is Sebastian Blanco for Portland. Mm-hmm. Not Blanco. Guzman. I'm thinking of Guzman. Actually, no. Guzman plays like the 8 role, 10 role, 6 role. He plays the 6. He plays the DM. I'd have to think. I don't know. Bradley plays that role. Bradley's the 6. Or an 8. God, I keep saying 6. Bradley's an 8. Bradley's in the middle of the pitch. He plays kind of some D mid. He plays some attacking mid. But really his main goal is to get the ball up to Josie, get the ball up to the other attackers, and let them do their thing. Mm-hmm. He's looking to help turn the ball over quickly when the counterattack starts so that their attackers can stay higher up the pitch. And at the same time, his other thing is to come back and defend when necessary as well.
I guess for those who follow Liga MX, the perfect example of what you're talking about, the number 8, would be Guido Pizarro.
That guy, yes. We should sign him, actually. We should bring him over.
He's with Sevilla right now.
Oh, dang it. He'd be great. And he scores goals, too. Yeah. Granted, they're rockets from out of nowhere, but he scores goals.
He scored very little goals, but the goals that he scored they weren't like shots from far away, but there was a couple of really good dribble. There was one against Querétaro. He dribbled like 5 players. If
you're listening, Matt Jordan, we do recommend Pizarro like right now. Just go pay the money that he wants. Whatever he wants, bring him in.
You answered Blues fan question. He had barely asked. scoring 8 or just an all-around 8 when you mentioned like
there's not a lot of scoring 8s out there. A true 8 doesn't score. That's not their responsibility. That's not to say they can't. Rico's an 8. And he does score, but I think Rico also tends to push too high up on the pitch. He wants to get involved in the attack, and I really wish he wouldn't a lot of times. I wish he'd kind of sit back and let the attackers do the attack.
Yeah.
But that's a position they need to replace. That's somebody they need to replace. And so that's why I say a number 8. And Alex is not that number 8.
Yeah. No. So besides that, you mentioned the young CB and the number 8.
Correct. And then some winger depth. Those really are my only 3 things that I care about right now.
Yeah.
Because I feel like every other position we have starters and depth pretty decently.
Yeah.
I feel like depth for Tomas is probably something we probably need to look into as well. But I do think Luka could eventually fill that role as depth up there as an attacking mid. I feel like on your wing, you are looking at Memo out on the wing. I prefer him more central, but he can play winger just fine. But we definitely need some depth over there. We got Wenger, which is great, but that's only one player.
Yeah.
Arturo Alvarez, who we just brought over, it's great. It's depth. Kind of fills that role a little bit, but he's not going to play every match. He's just not. So you still need a little bit more depth at wing. Now, we could get that in the draft. There are young, speedy players you can get in the draft, which is really all I just give me a young, speedy player on the wing. He can learn from Wilmer how to shoot and how to do how to cross and all that. But still, let's start with just getting him speedy, because that you really can't teach speed. So those are my priorities, and it starts with the young CB, because if you don't get the young CB, everything else kind of becomes a moot point at that. It's just really pointless.
Moot point and then pointless. That was kind of unintentional joke.
This is my question, and I feel like now that we're in the off season, it'd be a good time to touch up on it. Obviously, one of the biggest weaknesses that we had this past season was playing away. Do you think that, or what do you think should be done to alleviate that problem, where that way we don't have to rely too much on playing good at home to get the points needed to make another playoff run?
Play in a league other than MLS. The problem that most people don't realize, if you look at everyone else's road records, they're not that much better than the Dynamo. The middle of the pack, most of those teams away had 3 or 4 wins. We had 1 win away, but that's something you can improve upon. And I think that a lot of that also comes from player experience. And we had a stretch of road games that was just torturous. Mm-hmm. In the middle of the season, it's clear MLS didn't want to schedule home matches for us in August and kind of the end of July into August, and that it hurts your team, it hurts your club pretty harsh, because that's roughly 4, 5, 6 matches on the road you pretty much play in a row. Yeah. So, but yeah, so in short, there's nothing that can be done about it. I mean, LA this year, the Galaxy, they were kind of they were the counter to the norm, in that they were really good away from home and then shit-tastic at home. They really weren't that good at home at all. But again, majority of your clubs away from home are not very good on the road.
Calloway says, MLS to Dynamo, you will play 28 road games in 2018.
He ain't wrong.
Yeah, so, but yeah, Calloway, he actually did talk about Kubo, whether we should offload him.
Let's touch on it again, right, real quick. The problem with Kubo is that we've already paid 80% of his salary, or 80% of that transfer fee, which we, are basically paying over 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. So if you've paid 80% of it, that means that any amount that you get back is going to be less than what you've paid into that. And so we have to kind of remember, too, Kubo's value is based on his performance. His performance to start the season was fantastic. I kept praying that we would offload him by mid-season, because his form was so spectacular to start the season. He was motivated. I think we probably had some offers, but it wasn't enough to make it worth our while to make the trade. But that's kind of what you run into when you pay that amount about a transfer fee for a player. If they don't work out, you're probably not getting that back. And any trade that you're going to make, you need to kind of recoup some of that. There's not a team out there that's going to be willing to pay enough money to take them off our hands at this point. There's just really not.
Yeah, because I don't think even Chivas, for starters, Chivas, the owner is very, very stingy with his money. So,
well, he runs. Now the problem is, right, the 2011 rule that we talked about last week. Yeah. He's not a Mexican player. He's not technically a Mexican player. How does that work with the 2011 rule?
Hold on, say that again.
He's technically not a Mexican player. You know what I'm saying? Technically he's not a Mexican player. He is. He plays for their national team, but he's a dual citizen. So how does that work for him? Right? Okay. That's a question. Okay, so suddenly we finished our Dynamo Power Hour. We're now to the Liga MX Power Hour.
Okay, so basically, it's interesting because before the limit on a team on the amount of foreign-born players or foreign players technically, was 5.
Yeah.
But a foreign player could file a change of citizenship, become a Mexican citizen, and he'd be considered a Mexican citizen.
So it's basically that was how MLS, or that is how MLS does it
with the green card.
With the green cards, or if you file for citizenship and you become a dual citizen, then you can count as a citizen.
I believe the rule
an American player.
Now, don't quote me on this, guys, but I believe the rule now is that the citizenship that goes in your favor, like what you're going to be classified as far as the amount, because now I believe you can only field a certain number of formal player. I think it's 8, including your bench. So that rule where you could become a citizenship and be counted as a Mexican, that doesn't count anymore.
Correct. That's why I'm asking the question I'm asking.
I believe that now it is whatever your nationality it was at a certain age. That's the nationality you're going to be.
I think it's 21.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's 21.
Maybe 19,
when you turn
19,
one of the two. Yeah, somewhere in that range where you are advancing between youth to the senior team, the first team. When you advance from that level, that's basically where they're deciding what nationality you really are. It makes sense to some degree, but at the same time, they're really limiting their base. But that's what they want to do. They wanted to help develop the Mexican national pool of talent more than they had been, because they'd been bringing in so many international players to try to improve the overall league.
The thing about it is, now where they took out the limit of 5. The problem now is you have teams like Monterrey, who only feel like 1 or 2 Mexicans, on the.
So they're going to have a lot of turnover this offseason, right?
Yes.
Are those tradable?
It depends.
That's right. There's corruption in Mexico. I forgot.
What I was more along the lines that whole that new rule with the
2011 rule
of players, of foreign-born players, that's still in effect. But now they have to balance that with the 2011 rule.
Gotcha. I gotcha.
So they can still have all those foreign-born players, but it's not now. In order to play those young Mexicans, they can't rely just on using the cup.
You have to be able to integrate them all.
They
into their
league as well.
Into their actual league matches.
So that's gonna be very interesting to see. Teams like Tigres, teams like America, teams like Monterrey, who rely a lot on these foreign-born players, or older Mexican nationals.
Well, it definitely requires those teams to dig into the talent pool that they already have from their academies and from their local base, and try to pull in as many players as they can at the at the top level of talent.
Callawis, I think what you're saying there, that is for national team. I'm not talking about national team. I'm talking about Liga MX. So Liga MX, like I said, works differently than a national team.
Oh yeah, by a long shot. Well,
Yeah.
To be fair, FIFA works different than most leagues do to begin with.
So the way FIFA is, like, you have to have an allegiance to one nationality if you're a dual nationality when you're at the senior level.
You get capped, basically.
Yes.
That's the way that works.
Mm-hmm. So it does. So whatever you were in the youth level, you can change it once you get to the senior level. But once you play at least one game at the senior level with the national team, that's it.
So it's kind of like Giles Barnes, right? Mm-hmm. Giles Barnes was a good example of that, and it's not based on the number of games you play with your senior team. FIFA has a contingency in there that you can make a one-time transfer request to switch your nationality to your second nationality, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Because who did it? I know Giles Barnes did that, right?
Yeah, he did that.
He was with the English.
English. He was in England player. Yeah.
He went to Jamaica.
Jamaican, because his grandparents were from Jamaica. Mm-hmm. Are from Jamaica. Yeah.
Yeah. So Liga MX pretty much the thing about it is that they were complaining that they felt like that five foreign born cap was what's the word? So they were discriminating, against foreign born players, because they saw, like, well, you have the Premier League, which has so many foreign born players, but look at the quality.
They're paying more money
so that's
too.
What they were, but that's the logic that they were going at.
Yeah.
But now the problem is, like, yeah, you're bringing all these foreign-born players, but what's going to happen to, how are our young guys going to get first team minutes, and isn't that going to hurt us in the long run?
Right, if you think about it, not to make this into a longer podcast than it has to be, but that's kind of the U.S. issue right now between MLS. MLS has continued to increase the international slots, that most of the players you see coming into the fold in MLS are non-U.S. based players. They're non-Americans or non-Canadians or non-Mexicans. They're players from all over at this point. Look at Atlanta. Atlanta's a perfect example of that, right? How many of those players are foreign-born Venezuelans? The point there, though, is that there are a lot of questions being asked whether that has pushed the U.S. men's national team pool to not being competitive enough. Mm-hmm. And I think those are questions that, definitely need to be asked and definitely need to be figured out and answered. But at the end of the day, that's a podcast for another day.
So Callaway says that in regards to Giles Barnes, the reason he was able to switch is because he was uncapped at senior level. So he only played under 19 for England.
There are other players that have played. They've been capped by their senior team, and they've made the request to transfer, and they've been allowed to transfer.
Mm-hmm. But it's rare.
It's very, very rare. It is very rare. There are circumstances that have to play into that. Usually they've been capped, but they haven't played a competitive match type of thing.
What's his name? He played for Atletico de Madrid. Because he played with the... Maybe I'm getting this wrong. I think he played for Brazil first, but then he decided to change to play with... Or was it backwards? He played with the Spanish national team, and then he changed his allegiance to the Brazilian national team.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name.
Yeah. It's not Diego Costa.
Oh, yeah.
Diego Costa.
Yeah. No, that's a good example. Another one is... this is probably not his name because I'm probably not remembering it right. Mamuda. He played for the French national team, mm-hmm. and then he went to go play for Martinique, and that came up during the and so that's a good example of that. And I know he was capped by the French national team multiple times, mm-hmm. but he still switched to go play for Martinique.
But then again, the difference here is that Martinique is not a FIFA sanctioned.
Exactly. But like I said, there are contingencies in there for various options like that.
it usually 9 times out of 10, really more like 90 out of 100, 99 out of 100, we're talking about a player, once you're capped by the senior team, you don't switch.
Another example, Rocker. Yeah, that's true. Edgar Castillo, El Homie Castillo with Mexico and USA.
Yeah, exactly. So there's definitely examples, anyways. But the point that I was trying to make, anyways, is that there is this dampening of the pool because of the way MLS has begun to focus on the international players to increase their profile as a league. The league profile, the money the league is making. So how did they combat that? They've tried academies. That's only worked so well. It all ties into a bigger podcast because the other caveat to that is the college system and how that plays into everything in development. Mm-hmm. USL, PDL. There's so much that ties into U.S. soccer as a federation overall and how it develops players and what needs to change, pay to play. All of that. And it's kind of cool because we're seeing a lot of these discussions taking place finally, thanks to this U.S. Soccer Federation, presidency candidacy going on right now. I'm interested to see what takes place. I'm interested to see who ends up being president. We don't know. This is the first time in years we haven't known who our president was going to be in the next term. And there's people with a lot of good ideas. Kyle Martino is one of them, and I really like Martino. I'm going to throw him out there, even though nobody listening cares. Kyle Martino is my guy. If I had a vote, he would be the one I would vote for. Anyways, it's past 10 o'clock. 9 o'clock. Sorry, 9 o'clock.
That'll make it
We really need to fix that clock. Although, really, at this rate, we wait another 3 months and it's spring again. So, or I guess 3.5 months, but still. Anyways, we need to fix that clock. I keep thinking about it. We need to fix our clock.
But you know what? I liked today's podcast because with these whole discussions that we're having, a lot of different topics for future episodes have popped up.
Absolutely.
That we just don't have time to talk about it at the Peel.
And I've talked to Justin and Josh about this. We are going to do another podcast in January 3rd, and we'll probably do a couple after that as well before the preseason kicks off. We have some ideas. We want to do this during the off season as much as possible. Maybe you and I run another one of these next week. I don't know. We'll see. We'll talk. But it's hard for those two right now because they work retail. I said we were going to get to this. I didn't expect it to be at the end of the show, but hey, whatever works. They work retail, and as everyone knows who's ever worked retail, when you work retail, this time of year is hell.
I did it for 7 years.
I did it for like 9. I did it for 7, 8 years because I did Radio Shack for a year and a half. No, okay, I guess 9 years. So no, I totally. It is literally hell. You work longer hours. You work funky shifts that aren't the same.
You get so much crap.
Customers are less. They're just terrible. You get your nice customers too. You have your good moments. That's what gets you through. But you're just so much more stressed. You're more tired. You're more exhausted. So Josh and Justin, we understand. We appreciate you guys. And I just want to throw it out there that that's why they're not able to do this. That's why we're taking the additional 2 weeks off. This was supposed to be a week off, and then we turned it into kind of an RGV down in the valley type thing with a little bit of Dynamo talk, an hour. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, those types of podcasts with those level of discussions, USSF, I need Justin. I need Josh because they have I'm so going to get crap for giving them a compliment about this on air, no less.
To a Philly fan?
To a Phillies fan, yeah, no less. By the way, the Philly Union are changing their colors a little bit.
No one cares.
Yeah, I know. They're changing it from puke yellow to slightly less pea yellow. But they have good ideas. They have good points to make. And I like this format. It's great for the off season. But, man, I would struggle to try to do this format. It just, I don't know. It works so much better with them.
No, I think with this, it should be more of a round table kind
Exactly.
of format.
Yeah, it could be a round table. Yeah. We just need 6 more of these type of mounts. Just mount them all the way around this table. The table's perfect for this, by the way. So, mount them all the way around. And then we have mics all just sitting around in a circle. It would be great.
Yeah, it'd be great. We had last week, we had Victor Ariza.
Victor was fantastic.
Yeah, we can have sort of guests on to talk about these kind of things, especially someone who is pretty much in the media, you can say.
Well, definitely. I mean, pretty much. No, he's definitely in the media. When you're releasing posts on MLS, you're in the media. But yeah, and we definitely, one of the things we want to do is the U.S. Soccer Roundtable. That's got to happen. There's so many people that have good ideas as well besides Justin and Josh.
We had Jen as well.
Yeah, Jen. Yeah, Jen, Eddie, Victor, Derek from Dynamo Theory. Yes. We need to give them a shout out, by the way, Dynamo Theory. Go check them out, dynamotheory.com, and also at Dynamo Theory on Twitter. And then, we've had a couple other people on. I can't remember who they are because it's been so long. But, what I'm trying to say, and not doing a very good job making it eloquent or anything of that nature, is that the soccer community here in Houston has a lot of people with great ideas, great understanding of what's going on right now and what has gone on, whether it's Dynamo, whether it's Dash, whether it's USL, whether it's RGV, whether it's PDL, whether it's Dynamo Academy, whatever it may be, NPSL, whatever, WPSL. I mean, people that have experience in areas that I am never going to be able to get the experience in, and my goal, I don't know if this jives with Josh and Justin's, but I want to get them in here as much as possible, and on the podcast, because I want, if we can, I want to give them a voice, right? And I know the guys do feel that way. They want to give that voice out there. And so, at the end of the day, that's what I want to see. And so I'm hoping we can make that happen in January. I'm hopeful. But we need to really start planning now because that's only a month away. Yeah. We'll do what we can to try to get them on and try to get them in. Raphael, like I said, January 3rd, I'm hopeful that we'll be out at 8th Wonder. We'd love to get you to chat with you and find out, what you got to talk about, what you want to talk about. He says he's a huge Houston fan, Houston sports fan. You and I will have plenty to talk about. I guarantee it.
So if you're still here, Rafael, if you can follow us on Twitter at thepeel05, or also you can follow Down in the Valley at Down in the RGV. Be sure, if you follow us, contact us, and we'll give you more details as to when
and where. Yeah.
Yes. When the date approaches, if we're going to be at 8th Wonder Brewery, so you can come and join us, and you can get a couple of beers. And the invitation, join to all of our audience that's on right now, dude. If you're here in the Houston area, join us once a Wednesday at 8th Wonder. Grab a beer.
What was it? 3 weeks ago, we had that guy that just walked up from
Brownsville.
Yeah, and he was down for it was the Seattle match. He was down for the Seattle match, and. He didn't even know we were broadcasting. He had never listened to the show. He just walked up and, he basically was part of the show for 15, 20 minutes. It was great. That's what I love. I love that interaction and engagement. And that's also why I push you guys when you're on Twitter or you're in the YouTube chat, send us your questions, send us your comments. As you saw from this episode, this is how we like to do things. We love your insight. We love your questions. Because we don't always think of these things as we're going through. When you're staring at a screen or you're staring at another person, those things don't always come to mind, and so those are good things to have. We do try to kind of plan out what we're going to talk about for the podcast, show by show, but we don't always stick to that script at all. Sometimes we go very off the rails, but definitely come out. That's the main thing, right? Glenn says it all the time. Come out and support local soccer, whether it's Soccer Matters, whether it's Dynamo All Access. Actually, they don't have Dynamo All Access now. It's whatever it's called. If it's the Peel. Look, we would rather you come out to the Peel than Soccer Matters, I'll be honest. But you know what? Go support local soccer. I don't care where you do it or how you do it, whether you go support a local team, a local youth team, the Dash, the Dynamo, whatever it is. Support local soccer. It'll help us grow. It'll help soccer in this community grow. And finally, we're starting to see, and we're getting feedback that this is the case, that this show is creating a voice for the fans to finally have that opportunity to really keep the front office accountable, really, if you think about it, because it doesn't happen
from other entities. And we did hit on that a little bit last week with Victor Ariza, so make sure you listen to last week's episode, shameless plug. And make sure you like and share our videos on YouTube. And also subscribe to our YouTube channel, because when you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you are alerted ahead of time when we are going live. Yes, that's great.
And that includes the regular Peel episodes,
and Down in the Valley.
And any random videos that we decide to upload. Dynamo related, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But, maybe there will be some FIFA videos in there. I don't know. We'll see.
No, that stays with Big Asso Gaming 956. Another shameless plug. So if you like GT,
make sure you go follow all of Edson's possible channels that he has.
So if you guys like Grand Theft Auto 5 and FIFA, be sure to check out Big Asso Gaming 956. But
I feel like he should be paying for this airtime.
Okay, so Blues fan says, get more material to talk about and give the audience more time to ask questions. And then he says,
you had 2 hours. What are you talking about?
And then he says, let's chip in to hire Victor for the Peel. I got $350.
That's more than I make. Wait, we're supposed to make money off this? Crap, I've been doing this wrong the whole time.
And then Blues fan also asked, who do you have winning the Dynamo Media match tomorrow?
The team that Foxtrot is on. Andres is... Actually, I take that back. What team is Derek on?
I'm not sure.
I don't know what team Derek is on. Derek Stowers from Dynamo Theory. I'm going to tell you right now, I've played indoor soccer with that guy. He's going to tear somebody a new one. Like, he's a good forward.
So if we really need to make a 7-on-7 team.
Find me enough people. I'll go out and play. I love to play. My problem is I'm a little out of shape. But
well, me too.
Yeah, you're a lot better off than I am.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, if there's people that want to form together a team tied to the Peel, we can't afford to sponsor you, I promise. But we can we will participate. I love playing soccer. I really do. I played indoor soccer with Trill City for a year. We won that season, by the way. That was fantastic. Shameless plug. Also follow Trill City on Twitter too, at Trill City FC, I think is what it is. But yeah, seriously, if you guys want to play soccer at any point, send us a tweet. Whatever.
I'll play goalkeeper, or if I can find, if there's
a
goalkeeper.
A defender, but I can play forward. You can ask Derek. I've got a few goals that surprise some people.
For next year, if you guys need a commentator, I can
play-by-play broadcast.
Yeah. So a couple of more things. So Racker says
this podcast is going to go 3 hours.
No, we're about to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so Racker says rant about the supporters groups next time.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's going to happen.
And then
I've been holding that one back.
And then Blues fan says I meant to do a podcast every other week. And then Blues fan says, Racker, no, that's a whole new cesspool we can't fathom.
Oh. Well, all right, guys, we appreciate you tuning in to Down in the Valley and the Dynamo Power Hour on Down in the Valley. Again, follow us on Twitter at Down in the Valley RGV and at the Peel 05. That's right.
And make sure to check us out the next time we have the Peel. Check us out not only on YouTube, but hopefully on KTXF.
DB, the Real, via the TuneIn app. A Texas Sports Review Network show.
Something like that. Let's just be.
I don't have the script in front of me, so I'm going off memory, and it's not working real well.
We're not on the reel, so but you get the point. Yeah. But thank you all for joining us on this episode. Really appreciate it. Like Sean said, like the video, share it with your family, share it with your friends, share it with your grandma. Just
share it with your
just help.
mama.
It really helps us. It really helps us.
It does. It does.
And really appreciate that you guys have. Been very participative in these past Down in the Valley podcasts, as well as with the Peel as well. So until next time, hope to see y'all again, and we want to give a big thanks to Sean for producing during Down in the Valley and taking over the mini Peel.
That's only going to happen for 2 weeks at the max, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, but I mean it's you pretty much lifted my ratings.
Wow. Whoa. Oh, hold up. Sorry. Stroking my ego over here. Whoa.
But until next time, I'm Edson for
I'm
Down
Sean.
in the Valley,
I'm Sean from the Peel.
and hopefully we actually have some plans, but we'll talk about this when we finish.
Yeah, like I said, we'll talk about it later.
For Down in the Valley. So until next time, take care and